People who live in small towns. What's the story everyone knows but no one likes talking about? The superintendent of my hometown school district got a DUI in a school zone and used his wealth and influence in the community to not only get out of jail time, but to get the arrest completely scrubbed from his criminal record. He sued multiple people for slander for mentioning it publicly because, as far as the official record is concerned, it never happened. In my town we had the mayor's daughter drive drunk through a pizza place and get out of the car and walk up to the counter and try to order. It was on the news for like one day and then disappeared completely. The place just opened back up. There's a dungeon under the abandoned yellow house in the park that was used by the current owner's great-grandfather. He admitted on his deathbed that he was the cause of 13 disappearances from the 1910s to the 1930s. Issue is, we don't know who the 13 victims are since the surrounding area has had hundreds of disappearances over the decades and we have nothing to go off of except a period of nearly 30 years. Plus, no one wants to think about a relative or ancestor being locked up in there. About 3 years ago a young les couple came up missing. They found their car half submerged in the river but no sign of the girls. They found them a week later in the river dead with bullet wounds in their heads. It devastated the town when it happened but I feel like it got covered up quickly so it wouldn't scare off any tourists. They made a small memorial near the river for the girls. And it's been vandalized beyond repair twice now. In the other town I lived in, the mayor's wife held an elderly couple on Christmas Eve while driving drunk. She never did any time. Completely swept under the rug. But he didn't get re-elected thankfully. The former principal of our school used to be a Nazi. Like a real Nazi. Hitlerjugend Gorlite Nazi. Two guys robbed one of those car compating places, where they mash up old vehicles into giant metal bricks. They went in at night. Dropped off by their GFS to go get parts and scrap to sell I guess. They'd done it before. The owner found out and waited for them one night. Shot both in the backs of the heads. Put their bodies in a car and crushed it up. The truck didn't come to pick up the metal for a couple days so the one with their bodies sat out in the heat. The officers only found them after the GFS telling police they dropped them off there and couldn't find them again. They checked the place and found them from the smell. I remember before the two guys were found. Missing posters of them were all over the town. Change of tone on this one but I figured I'd share anyway. I grew up in a tiny farm town in PA. On Christmas Eve, one of the local farmers would go to all the houses with kids and climb on the roof and walk around for a minute or two to keep our belief in Santa alive and well. It's hilarious cause he never asked. Just always did it every year. It obviously wasn't talked about much so that the kids never caught on. But was truly so cute. Edit. Thank you for the silver. It's my first Reddit award. So glad this is making people happy. Senior year of high school. First week of the new school year. It happened during lunch. And by the end of the day the entire school knew. We all wanted to talk about it. But we had to do it in whispers. But one way or another, everyone eventually knew. Two freshmen did now in the library. This guy I know we call the Ginger Ducked an Ostrich. Allegedly. That some of the large apartment blocks built in the last 15 years are either unsafe or illegal. It came out a few years back that a member of our local government in charge of checking building regulations was frequently sleeping with and accepting bribes from all the major building companies. She then fled out of state and all the other party members had to clean up after her. Back then way less people had moved down here so no one really took any notice outside of the local news outlets. But I still think about all the building built too close to each other or how some are still being found to be unsafe. Young local lawyer is kidnapped in the middle of the night at gunpoint and ordered to tie up her husband. There is a man in jail for the kidnapping but she has never been found. Happened in the early 90s and the theory is she was held to cover up corruption in the court system. She was supposedly going to the DA about some shady sheet. In what was once voted the most beautiful small town in America, a police officer was driving home at the end of his shift when, on an off-ramp, He encountered a bunch of brush inexplicably placed in the roadway blocking his path. When he got out of his cruiser to clear it, he was assassinated by a killer with a shotgun. That was in 2013. And the case has yet to be solved. Worse yet, it unwound a mire of controversy and conspiracy. A year later, a mother and daughter were found brutally murdered, the mother shot multiple times, and the daughter bludgeoned and her throat slit. A year after that, a 35-year-old woman went missing. And a little over a year later, that woman's father was shot to death on his own property while hunting. Theories abound about the connections between these four unsolved cases. Local government corruption, intimate affairs and murder plots. And the FBI now maintains a near constant presence in this small Kentucky town of only 12,000 citizens. All of this in Bardstown, Kentucky. The Bardstown podcast does an excellent job of breaking it all down. There is a family in my hometown that nobody talks to. My grandma has a small bar and doesn't allow them in. The reason is because the children are all product of incest. The two parents are brother and sister. Then she had a baby with her dad. They had multiple children, and when they got older they had children with their children. It's fucking disgusting. My town's pretty small. One of the middle school teachers ducked a high school student. His dad works at the high school and didn't show up for a month after his son got arrested. Nobody talks about it, but everybody knows. Freshman year. My history teacher was fired 1 month into the school year because some kids found porn on his school laptop. Everyone knows. Don't live there anymore. But some kid across the street from my dad killed himself the other day. Young kid like 20. Apparently he had court dates for sexual assault or something. Was just renting a room there, so there were cops there questioning all the roommates for a day or two. Probably a couple came in on call because there is like one cop around on duty unless it's a holiday or something. This guy built armor around his bulldozer and ran it through town, damaging several buildings because he was mad at the local government. It's nicknamed the Killdozer if you want to look it up. The locals are sick of giving that guy's story the time of day. Edit, Wikipedia.org. There's a crazy man roaming around on his bicycle, kind of verbally bullying anyone getting too close to him and people from our small shops. Everyone learned to kind of ignore him. Guy I used to go to school with murdered a guy because the guy was his secret lover and was running his mouth. His family is well-connected lawyers and had it covered up to look like a hit and run. Then the little brother was driving a boat while drunk and inadvertently killed a girl. Also got away with it, and he didn't have a boating license and also wasn't tested for alcohol. Everybody knows the truth, but nobody can do anything about it. Thank God I got out years ago. The latest one. We have a pretty big white supremacist community in the area. The son of the guy in charge is a lawyer. A lawyer who has demonstrated numerous times that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. At least as far as that particular ideology goes. Rumor has it that the lawyer is having marital problems because he's cheating on his wife with his legal assistant. His assistant is a dude. It's caused quite a stir. There was a family that took in a lot of foster kids. By all accounts, a very loving mother and father. At the time they had 2 kids of their own and were fostering 3. It came out that their biological son, 18, was having sex with one of their foster sons, 13. It was as consensual as a relationship between a 18 and 13 could be. I believe because the issues of statutory rape, the family lost the ability to foster anymore. They left the town after not too long. So not a super small town, but still something everyone knows but is getting swept under the rug. My high school has a legacy of teachers dating and marrying former students. The journalism teacher was let go after being accused by multiple women over many years of sexual abuse. Everyone knew he was a creep, but no one except the victims knew his creepiness went beyond putting a hand on students' thighs or giving shoulder rubs. Still wildly inappropriate, but the admins knew and nothing ever happened, so none of us students thought to take it any further. After a short review, his teaching license was reinstated in GA and he is free to do this to other women. He was married to a former student for a brief time as well. The German teacher was sleeping with a student, of age when it came out, but there is suspicion it didn't start when she was 18. It came out and his wife left him and moved with their kids. He blamed the student and then quit shortly after. One of the admins is married to a former student. They got engaged the day after her graduation and married shortly after. When I graduated, she had just started teaching there despite seeming way underqualified compared to the other teachers in the department. He was also very close with the other 2 teachers. My grandfather's brother killed himself and he warned that would do it. But people ignored. The detail is that this man was the most influential politician in the city and one of the biggest in the region. There's someone who has been killing people in my town and their bodies have been found around the same time every year in a large lake. Nobody talks about it, but people are being kidnapped, beaten, tortured and murdered by this sicko. It's insane. My hometown. A tiny little place 45 minutes south of Edmonton. Has multiples. There's the infamous 4. One of them I grew up with for years. That held a chick threatening to rat out Hell's Angels. Dumb move on her part. TBH. The woman who drowned her 2 boys in the bathtub then tried to commit suicide in Edmonton by jumping from the bridge. She was deported back to Australia after being apprehended. Later committed suicide. A guy was shot and left on a back road between my town and the next one over. Literally no media coverage other than the initial body of middle-aged man found. My step-sibling's mom dated a guy a little later after her separation from my now stepdad. And she decided she didn't see it working out and tried ending it. Not sure of details, but I guess he was like severely attached to her, like stage 8 clinger type thing, and he cornered her at her house one day and threatened to kill himself if she didn't at least talk to him, and she refused to let him in the house. And well, he shot himself with a shotgun in her backyard. Poor woman. My typical little farm town looks pretty plain. Basic and like a we'd be one big happy family that's portrayed in movies as a cookie cutter community. When you drive through it, you'd never even guess that you just drove through a one big dirty secret that hides behind smiles and wide open welcoming arms. The son of a well-respected doctor got high on mushrooms and stabbed his father to death. He also blinded the doctor's partner too. He only got 5 years, which I think is a damn shame. The doctor was liked by everyone and was incredible in his field. A lot of people have just stopped going for colonoscopies, etc. because he was the best and the other doctors in town just don't compare. There's an auto plant where a large percentage of men worked during the 40s 70s. The plant has shut down now and gave out great pensions, but it doesn't matter much because a large percentage of the men who work there developed cancer. Former employees keep lists of co-workers who died from cancer. Our town has unofficially been nicknamed the Town of Widows. Years ago, an employee of a small nutrition shop abducted 2 female customers. He forced them into the store's basement, repeatedly assaulted them, and then took them to his home where he confined them. He also cut off their hair. I drive past both the shop and the home quite often and it always gives me the creeps. I can't believe that the store is still in business and that other people have moved into the house. Everyone talks about when Larry had sex with Casey the night before she was supposed to marry Calvin. No one talks about the fact that she slept with every other guy in town leading up to that. She was 23 and slept with everyone from 18-year-olds straight out of high school to her friends' dads. But Larry is the asshole because she used that specific time to get out of the wedding, even though she had a kid with Calvin. 7 years later, Calvin and Casey have 2 more kids and still live together. A church had opened a private school, which had been running along fine for about 25 years. Sometime in the late 90s, I think. The administrator was getting a little too power hungry and too corrupt and was asked to resign after being told several times that there was overstepping her boundaries. She left at the end of the school year, but had told as many parents and potential families as she could that the school was closing after the year, and that she was opening another one. She had the office phones forwarded to her own phone, started enrolling students in a new school, And one day drove a U-Haul truck to the building in the middle of the night and stole pretty much everything that wasn't bolted down to the floor. Anyone who attended the school while she worked there will still say she was insane. But no one else ever wants to talk about it. Edited to fix a spelling mistake. There was a hostage situation where the cops killed a mentally ill man because they thought he had a weapon. He didn't. It was a standoff that lasted 2 days and everyone thinks the cops just wanted it over because of the news coverage it was getting. The whole street was barricaded off and everyone was driving up and hanging out, trying to get a glimpse of what was happening. Kip from Kip's Tacos murdered his wife and put parts of her in the taco meat. The son of a well-known and well-liked figure in the community roofied a girl in high school. She developed a drug habit because of it. Her brother tried to kill the guy and was convicted of attempted murder. The roofier still accompanies his dad to community events and is currently in grad school. The fact that our previous mayor was alcoholic and had some serious corruption cases involving drug and bet money. Moreover, he was a pediatrician and after that he has continued with that job. And no one wants their child to be treated by the corrupt, alcoholic asshole. It isn't all that well known actually. And the small town I live in is part of the DC suburbs, so it doesn't really count all that much. That having been said, the South Vietnamese major in this famous photo lived in my town for a long time. He ran a little pizza shop near my house. I used to stop in there and get a slice and a soda every now and then. Very nice guy. Some people found out it was him and he left town after being harassed. It was a shame. If you know the full story, it is understandable why he shot the guy. That we had a school shooting 3 years before Columbine happened. Where I used to live, it was a known fact that colored people of any kind were not taken kindly to. One time an African American man came into town and had to get escorted out by the sheriff, and all the sheriff said is don't come back basically. Also there are a lot of meth heads and apparently one story of a pedophile. The bullying is so bad at the schools that there was a suicide epidemic a few years ago. Even teachers were involved in bullying students. My friend's 9 years old stepsister is currently being bullied and the school looks the other way. Her parents are considering having her switch schools because nothing else has worked. The school janitor held his girlfriend through autoerotic asphyxiation. The high school principal cheated on his wife with a teacher. The vice principal cheated on his wife with a guidance counselor. A family that's mixed race wrote the N-word on their house claiming it was racist members from the football team. The mom actually did it to get her son into a higher grade school. One of the kids who just graduated in my class did a drive-by shooting this past Monday on another student because the kid wouldn't buy weed from him. If I remember any more good ones, I add them on. We had a serial killer in my town. No one talks about that. A man in my mother's hometown raped a mentally disabled girl. She was a minor, I believe, 4 years, and everyone found out a few years ago. He isn't in jail or anything BC of the lack of evidence and the family being conservative. Nobody told me how they found out, but I suspect that the girl got pregnant and the word got around. If you are not from around here, you do not get picked for the position. Sure, the bigger companies have figured out that this is bad policy. But the little mom and pop businesses would rather hire their own kids or their friends' kids. Duck the outsiders. I come from a small Midwestern town in the middle of nowhere and people keep disappearing. It started when I was pretty young, 5-6, not really sure on the specifics. But I do remember noticing a teacher went missing. Being 5-6, we all assumed she moved till I overheard my mother and aunt talking about how no one knew where she went. Fast forward a few years, the local general store owner vanished, then a pair of hunters, then a few kids from a grade up. I've never seen a newspaper article or a police report on any of them, not even missing persons report. No one seems to talk about it, but we all know it's happening. There was a creep in our town everyone knew about and warned their kids about. The front door of his house had a dirty diaper taped to it. He had no kids. One day he invited 2 girls into his house to see the new kittens and he exposed himself to them. Luckily they ran out of there and nothing else happened. His house stank like shit from the outside. A classmate was injured in an accident when he was in high school and started using opiates and later overdosed in his mid-20s. They ended up painting an anti-drug mural with his face in the cafeteria at the school. What no one talks about is how he was selling drugs and was a pathological liar and all-around dirtbag before his accident. No. He was just another victim of prescription opiates. Bullshit. There's a statue of a volunteer firefighter at the corner of the village's busiest intersection. He was memorialized for being selfless and being the embodiment of being a good neighbor. Nobody ever talks about though that when he was alive they called him Richie the Retard. One day I see a bunny. But like a huge bunny. I thought it was normal sized, but as I got closer I realized I was wrong. Thing was an absolute unit. Like medium sized dog. As time went on I would occasionally see more and more of these gigantic mutated rabbits. So turns out this guy had a couple of pet giant rabbits and then moved out to college. The official story his parents gave him was that his beloved pet rabbits got sick like a week after he moved out and had to be put down. Dude was devastated. My guess is that the rabbits weren't put down and were instead released. Now I'm not sure if Flemish giants can interbreed with wild bunnies. But everyone swears that even the local bunny population is composed of mega bunnies. And the parents are low-key kind of hated by everyone now for being big digs to their child. There's a medical group in my town that has slowly bought all the other hospitals in the area and closed critical locations in other smaller towns to require that they be flown via helicopter to my town for treatment. They also run their own insurance company. They have lobbied for law changes to prevent them from being ruled a monopoly. And lobbied city governments to make it criminal to protest them. And most recently, their CEO was placed on a board governing charter schools. In private. People hate them and want them gone. But the people with money and power believe that this organization is going to improve our area. People are dying. Being mistreated. And shamed for seeking medical treatment. Our area is deteriorating rapidly. There are more addicts and criminals now because it's harder to find employment outside of the medical conglomerate and or find affordable healthcare in my area now. Please send help.